Okay, looks like a few more are still just coming online, but we'll make a start. Yeah, one or two more. I'm sure they'll be in the session very shortly. So as I mentioned, good afternoon. Really appreciate you joining our webinar. Title of today's webinar, as hopefully you can now see, is How to Achieve Multi-Cloud Monitoring. My name's Phil Swainson. I'm the Head of Technical Services here at KedronUK, and I'm going to be leading today's events. With us today also we have David Hock. He's the Director of Research at Infosim.
Hi everyone. Thank you for the opportunity for the joint webinar.
Great to have you with us, David. Thank you. We'll be speaking with David a little later. Just a couple of housekeeping points before we start. You'll have noticed that all participants have been muted and will continue to be so during the session just to avoid the background noise. If you have questions, it's still possible to ask them, however. Just feel free to, in the webinar controls, you'll see the panel there where you can ask questions. Just enter them in there. We'll either answer them directly during the session or we'll follow them up after the presentation. Either way, we'll ensure you get an answer to your question. And then finally, I'd just like to let you know that this session is being recorded and all of you will be notified via email just as soon as that is available. Feel free to share that recording with your colleagues and to keep on hand for your review. So with all that covered, we'll get started. So just to look at the agenda of what we're going to actually cover together is first of all what customers tell us about monitoring their cloud's environments and the challenges that they face. We're then going to look forward to David taking us through the StableNet multi-cloud monitoring capabilities along with a live demo. And then we're going to have opportunity to answer any questions that haven't been answered throughout the presentation itself. So a fairly short and to the point agenda, hopefully something that you'll find useful moving forwards. Now here at Kedron, it seems that nearly every customer that we speak to across, whether it's enterprise, government and education sectors, they all seem to have some kind of active project called something like Cloud First, which by the very name gives you an indication as to what the project's all about. And when we're consulting with them in trying to help them to maintain or obtain unified management approach, they generally want to have visibility as their standard question. How can we get visibility of the cloud? We're going to hand over the control to these particular areas or lose control. What can we do? Want to address that subject in a different way than we have in recent seminars. Previously, we've looked at this from the perspective of application transactions and packet capture perspective. But the question isn't always just about one aspect. There are different flavors of cloud. There are different things that people are doing in the cloud. It might be just hosting. It could be software as a service. So there's all sorts of different elements that people want to look at from a visibility perspective. And our customers generally want to be able to collect metrics from their entire infrastructure, make sense of those metrics and interpret them so that they can then visualize in multiple different ways and provide stakeholders with role-relevant views so that when faults do occur with delivery of the end-to-end service, IT operations are able to quickly identify the root cause of the problem. So this is an end-to-end issue which obviously crosses over multiple areas of the infrastructure and is, generally speaking, a hybrid environment. It isn't just something that's in the cloud. It's potentially something that's on-prem. It could be in the public cloud, but it's more than likely a hybrid environment that our customers wish to be able to get that full visibility end-to-end with. So it presents quite a challenge. Now, of course, we're usually talking to them because they're struggling to achieve these aims, which is also demonstrated by research which has been carried out by research organizations such as Enterprise Management Associates, quotation here provided on screen, as to over nearly three quarters of customers that responded saying that they've been failed by some of the tools that they currently have, or they're finding it far too expensive to take up tools that are provided by the public cloud providers themselves. Now, when it comes to meeting these requirements, we typically recommend StableNet by Infosim. And as I mentioned just a moment ago, we have David Hock, Director of Research at Infosim, with us to tell us more and to run through the live demo. So we'll now hand over to David to take up his part of the presentation.
Thank you very much, Phil. Hope you can hear me all right. I'll start share my screen. Is it visible to everyone? Should be.
We can see that, David.
Perfect.
Yeah, we can hear you loud and clear. Thank you.
Perfect. Yeah, so once again, thank you for inviting me to present a little bit about holistic multi-cloud monitoring and how to achieve this with StableNet. As you, Phil already partly mentioned, we are also seeing digitization as a very large topic. It's a large challenge for many people, for the companies, and specifically public clouds are becoming more and more interesting because they are might be cheaper than on-premise solutions. They might offer economy of scale, some other topics. There are obviously different large players known for their offers in the public cloud environments. But still, there is also there are also the topics about security concerns. Not everyone's willing to put all their data in public cloud. Some of the data is still considered so critical that it should rather stay in-house on premise. So what we see happening also more and more, and what we see people discussing about, is sort of a hybrid multi-cloud strategy where they are combining both public and on-premise, public cloud and on-premise solutions. And one of the sentences that I hear a lot of people say more and more when we are talking about the monitoring of such multi-cloud environments and the holistic environments, including network, the clouds, the different silos, is story of my life. That's the story of my life. I know that I'm facing that problem. I have customers. I have my colleagues in the company phoning me as an IT administrator, as a network administrator about problems. And I tried on the following picture that I will build up in an animation. I try to visualize a little bit that story of a network administrator's life that I'm often hearing about. So we have different silos. We have the local network. We have the wide area network connecting different sides of the company. We have cloud environments. We have the host systems. Depending on the size of an organization, there might be an IT department which is fully responsible for all the different systems, running potentially a lot of different tools to monitor that, to manage that. Or if it's a larger organization, there might be also completely different teams, completely different groups, potentially sitting in different areas, different locations of the company, being responsible for the different silos. And now let's imagine that there's a customer, end customer, or one of the colleagues complaining about a bad service. Then we have a lot of trouble coming up. So the first problem is we have potential blind spots. There might be information missing from parts of the silos. So specifically, I know network people repeatedly telling about not knowing what's precisely happening in the cloud. And even if they know, they might have the problem, which is the next issue. They might have missing reference measurements. So just the simple fact that one user is complaining about, let's say, bad performance of Office 365 in the public cloud doesn't necessarily mean that the network's actually bad, but it could also be, let's say, a problem on Microsoft side for Office 365 in general, or it could be a problem of that specific instance running. So you need additional reference measurements to find out. And not enough. If you have actually someone calling and complaining, or writing opening a ticket and complaining, you have the problem that it's not really, after all, objective. he or she is saying, okay, the quality is not good, but what does that really mean? It takes long to load. Is that a second? Is that 5 seconds? Is that 500 milliseconds? That's really difficult to say. And also, if you are already ending up in that situation, you are already feeling bad because you are already in a reaction mode. So it's already too late. It's already, there's someone already being unhappy. So you need to take a quick action to actually get it back to work. And so summing up that story of my life, story of a network administrator's life, I'd say it's not always my business, it's not always my network, but how can I actually prove this? And now based on this, this example, I want to explain a little bit what our approach is from Infosim side with our StableNet solution. So let's look again at that whole scenario, and let's look at holistic visibility and monitoring offered by StableNet. So first of all, obviously there is the, what I would say, state-of-the-art part, or the key, let's say the key part of the whole thing is the network monitoring. It's also beyond state of the art if you want, because it's cross vendors, cross technologies. So we have the possibility to combine these different vendors, different technologies to bring all this together and to give a holistic view already of the network. But we don't stop there. In addition, there's also now, which I will also, what is part of my live demo later on, there is now the possibility to add more and more public clouds and private clouds to the monitoring using different APIs and interfaces, so that you can also get the different parameters of your Amazon Web Services, AWS CloudWatch instances. You can get this information into the same system. You can get, for a long time, you've been able to get VMware measurements into the system for many years now. You have OpenStack, you have other systems, you can Microsoft Azure, you can get all that together. Still, we don't stop there. What is also interesting, to have reference measurements, you actually need to find out and to be able to objectively measure how is the quality on an end-to-end perspective. So you need to add application monitoring. You need end-to-end measurements. From StableNet side, we are working with an approach that is called, in our terminology, business scripts. The users listening to the webinar that know StableNet will know for sure what I'm talking about. So with business scripts, you have the possibility to do end-to-end measurements of different typical applications. Let's say, for instance, for Office 365, if you want to know how fast actually Office 365 is currently working, you might want to have a script that is actually creating a calendar entry, deleting the calendar entry afterwards, and finding out how long it took altogether to create and delete the calendar entry. Or another example could be, if you are using OneDrive, you might want to copy a file of, let's say, 500 kilobytes. You might want to delete it afterwards, and you want to find out how long the whole transaction of copying it and deleting it took. The same for, let's say, creating contacts, for sending and receiving emails. So that's about application monitoring. And then, in order to be able to have reference measurements, it's important not to have this just from one endpoint, but it's actually very important to do this in a distributed fashion with a lot of different reference measurements coming from other locations. For that, we do have specifically our lightweight StableNet embedded agent, which is a special version of our agent software run on a device with a very small footprint. Like typically we are using Intel-based small embedded devices which are running the StableNet agent, and from there we can also do, for instance, in this use case, the same Office 365 measurements. So you could, instead of just monitoring from one side of your company, you could monitor from a lot of other remote locations as well. And then if you again have someone who is actually calling, you could actually find out if it's really a problem of the location or if it's rather a problem of the service itself. Altogether, this offers you the possibility to correlate the different measurement sources, Based on the measurements, you have an objective possibility to quantify the quality levels. It's something different. Someone saying it's slow is different compared to an objective measurement saying it actually takes 555 milliseconds. That's something you can actually judge and be objective about. And that also helps you for judging your KPIs and seeing if you're staying inside the service level agreements. And also based on the 24/7 proactive measurements that you can actually do with that system, you obviously also have the possibility to anticipate failures if you see quality decreasing rather than just being on a reactive mode. So it's still not always your problem, and now you can even prove that. A little bit more about the role of StableNet in that whole context. I've already explained it in my example. So we have many different underlying systems, like all the network components, like firewall security devices, so the optical network, Ethernet, IP, MPLS devices. We have servers and storage, virtual machines. We have public and private clouds, and StableNet is bringing all that together with a multi-cloud monitoring in a unified approach, cross-vendor, cross-silo, cross-technology, and helps with integrating all these technologies in a lightweight fashion. Before jumping to the live demo, just one more slide explaining a little bit how that unified approach looks like. Here underneath, I have 3 examples for different clouds, public and private approaches. Like we have the AWS cloud with CloudWatch offering an API and dashboards. In the left screenshot, you basically see the window of AWS CloudWatch where you have all the credentials. It's not important to read something there, but it's just like there is a window where you can get your individual keys, basically, if you like a username, and that you can use later on for StableNet to actually discover that cloud. On the right side, you see typical dashboards. Like this is a picture from the documentation where you can see sort of the information that you can visualize in CloudWatch. The same for Azure. You have a page where you can read your API keys and your specific information for your users. And you can also create dashboards there. And once more for VMware using vSphere, you also have windows where you can get your particular information about the system to connect to, and you can create dashboards. The same is for many different systems. And now with StableNet, we are actually using these different APIs to discover and collect adequate metrics from the different clouds and data center environments. We are pulling them all together into StableNet using our agents, and there we can offer the full power of our StableNet based on the information that we get. So namely, we can do automated grouping, filtering, and aggregation of data based on our tagging concepts. We can do fault management and automated root cause analysis. We can do seamless integration with activation and provisioning in different parts of the system. So we can bring this all very nice together. And I guess what is most important, we can offer this holistic view, visualization and reporting, which is tailored to the particular needs of the user, but which is bringing together all the different topics. So that can be unified dashboards and weather maps in a web-based interface or in our rich client, but it can equally be things you take away for your iPhone app, for your Apple Watch app, where you have the alarms on the go in your pocket. So that can be all brought together. And I guess looking at the time here and not wanting to bother you anymore with too many PowerPoint slides, I'll now jump into a short live demo where I want to show some of the aspects in StableNet itself. So for that purpose, I'm starting up here with the StableNet Rich client, where we are seeing an overview of the demo system that I'm working with here. Just picking some elements, we have I'm monitoring different cloud and data center environments, and I'm having here on the right side, I'm having a dashboard where I'm basically aggregating VMware data, Amazon Web Services data, and Office 365 data. And for each of these different data sources, I'm basically showing the alarms. So we can see that Amazon Web Services and Office 365 are currently running all right. And we have actually 4 failures in 4 alarms in VMware. And if I'm looking at that alarm table, I actually see that those are machines that are turned off. So that might be a wanted behavior, that those virtual machines are currently not running, but it could also be an indicator that there's a problem with those machines. Creating such dashboards is very convenient with StableNet because we are automatically tagging the data when discovering it with different parameters specifically for the measurements and the devices that can be used to do filtering and grouping. In order to show that, I'm just jumping here to another tree. It's the same data visualized in a different way. I'm jumping to a private and public cloud monitoring measurement tree that I've been creating before, and actually here I'm showing a tree where I have the different measurements sorted according to the source of information, so AWS CloudWatch, Office 365, and VMware. And then the second level of the tree, I've actually sorted the data by the type of information. So there are some administrative things like compute and control information. There are the hosts of the of VMware. There are storage measurements of VMware. There are virtual machines of VMware. Again, here we also see the 4 machines that are having that are showing an alarm because they are turned off. And if I'm looking at AWS CloudWatch, I'm getting the same sort of information. In this case, storage and virtual machines. And this is not information that has to be put in any way manually, but this is information that can be put completely in an automated way while discovering the different clouds, while adding these different cloud measurements. You can directly assign the tags and end up having these trees basically out of the box. I will now show an inverse tree. So here I have First, I have the different measurements, AWS, Office, and VMware, and then I have the different types, administrative, host, storage, and so on. Now I use the inverse tree configured as a tree as well in StableNet, where I basically have this the other way around. So I have on the top level, I have all virtual machines, and then if I drill down, I can see virtual machines for AWS, for VMware, for Office 365. Based on this, I'm here doing a quick run through. I think there are a lot of topics that I could explain, which is probably for an additional session, but I'm just showing here some of picking out some of the features, some of the things we can show. So based on that, if I jump to a category analyzer, I can actually bring together these different tags and values into to get even a better understanding also for fault management purposes. So let's say that I'm looking at the different cloud monitoring types that I have here, VMware, AWS, and Office 365. And let's say that for each of these types, I'm actually looking again at the different instance types. So if it's a virtual machine or a host or a storage, and I'm sort of doing a pivot table, which is actually aggregating all the alarms for these different types and showing it in a matrix. And if I'm now looking at that matrix, I actually see here for all the different cloud types that I'm monitoring, I'm seeing the worst available state currently for the administrative parts, for the end-to-end measurements, for the hosts, for the storage, and for the virtual machines. And this is actually yet another example where we are bringing together the different sources in an automated way and to ease the work with that. Now, maybe let's look a little bit into one of the machines specifically. I'm here taking a compute node from AWS, and I'm just opening up the analyzer. Here we can see an example of different metrics that we are taking from AWS CloudWatch. CPU-related metrics, disk write-related metrics, disk write and discrete-related metrics, network-related metrics, memory-related metrics. So there are these different metrics, and you can obviously, based on that, you can look at the at the performance in the past, you can do further analysis and continue working with that data. Now, you can also, as I have mentioned before, this data is tagged automatically and the categories are assigned automatically for the different devices. So I can, for instance, also use our group analyzer in StableNet. I'm here picking the whole VMware cluster and I'm looking at the group analyzer. And let's say for all these measurements that I have, I want to look at the virtual machines from VMware. So I'm selecting this here from the drop-down menu, and I want to look specifically at the maximum CPU usage. And then I actually get here an overview of all the different machines and about how much of their CPU they are actually using. So this is again thanks to the chance of StableNet to put the data together and tag it. And as we are slowly getting to the end of the half an hour, I'm just really quickly jumping here to two things. The one thing is I'm jumping to the device automation to show an example of a discovery script, which is actually adding the data to StableNet. So here we see a dialog where you can enter your AWS access key, secret key, monitoring period, AWS region, and so on. This is something you can get from your AWS account online. And the only thing you need to do to start discovering AWS is basically adding this information, kicking it off with the script in StableNet, and then you start discovering it and have the data and measuring it, of course, and have the data in StableNet. And the second thing that I want to show real quick without going into detail are the Office measurements end-to-end. So here we have measurements where we are measuring calendar entries, contact entries, sending and receiving mails, and file uploads on OneDrive and how long that takes. And for that purpose, here, let's just jump to the end-to-end measurements. We are actually using a functionality in StableNet, which is a business script that I have mentioned before. And this, again, is working in that way that you have here your script, which is in this case the Microsoft Office 365 calendar script. And you are providing the client ID, a client secret, some tenant ID, an Office 365 username. This is, again, seems like a lot of information, but it's actually something that you can pull directly from your Office 365 account, and having it available, you can directly start measuring and get your results. So jumping back to PowerPoint at that point, summing up what I have shown in the live demo, I hope I have given a quick overview that it's convenient and scalable to set up and discover just using this dialogues and entering the data from the different cloud environments. I've shown a little bit about automated data tagging and how this can be used for different trees and for different views at the data. I've also shown some examples for consolidating and correlating the data and the various information sources. And last but not least, I've also quickly shown how holistic visualization and reporting can look like with some of the examples. And that's why I want to hand back over to Phil. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, David. Really appreciate that. Such a shame we were up against the time scale on that one. We could have watched that plenty more. Let me just get back to my screen. Are you seeing my screen again now? Yep, all good. Yeah, so again, thank you very much, David. We really appreciate that. We've picked up a couple of questions as you went through. What version of StableNet were you using there? Is there one question?
It's the most recent version that came out in July this year. It's 8.5. Yes.
So 8.5. So what versions of StableNet support all the features that you've just been through? Do they have to have the latest version?
Depends on the feature, I'd say. Basically, like I'd say 90% of all the views that I've been showing, let it be analyzer, category analyzer, group analyzer, and so on and so forth. This is standard StableNet functionality, at least since version 7, I'd say. So we have been having this for a while. The cloud monitoring specifically to get the data into StableNet, that's more recent in StableNet 8. So most of the dialogues and views that I've used, this is commodity in StableNet, I would say. VMware has been there for some years. I guess maybe Phil, I don't know when you started having your first VMware customer with StableNet, but that might be quite a while ago. Like the public cloud monitoring, basically the new business scripts for Office 365 and so on, that's for the newer versions for StableNet 8, but it's not only restricted to 8.5. Yeah.
Excellent. That's great. Thank you, David. Now, you did obviously emphasize there about Office 365 as our example. Is it only 365 that's supported, or are there other applications that we can use as well?
Yeah, so Office 365 was the most, it's not only Office 365. Office 365 was the most obvious application to pick specifically for the cloud environment, because this is one of the very typical application that we see many people moving to the cloud. But we do our application monitoring and business scripts in general for end-to-end measurements. They encompass a lot of different applications, not only Microsoft applications, also a lot of different other things. And I think with some customers monitoring more than 150 different applications with StableNet. So it's not limited to that.
That's excellent. Thank you very much. And those scripts that you took us through, are they, those business scripts, are they ready available with an installation of StableNet, or are they special request?
They are ready available, but in terms of licensing, it's special request. So it's not delivered out of the box. You need to request them still for licensing purposes, but they are ready available in the sense that they can be gotten and started right away to use them. Yeah.
Excellent. So speak to your partners, and we'll help out where we can there. Okay. And one final one I think we've got time for. You just mentioned about the StableNet embedded agent. Could you just explain a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so thank you for that question as well, and for all the others. StableNet Embedded Agent is a concept that we've been offering for I'd say some years now. We've started with an ARM-based, Banana Pi-based version, and extended it now by an Intel-based version as well. And the embedded agent is basically a small version of our agent, which is lightweight and cost efficient. It has a quite small footprint. It's like I'd say not costing a lot of money. It's very easy plug and play, so you don't need any specific knowledge. If it's pre-configured, you just basically connect it to power and Ethernet, or power and Wi-Fi, depending on what setup you have, and then it can start the measurements right away, and the rest is controlled remotely through StableNet. So those are some of the benefits. It's cost efficient, it's easy plug and play to deploy, and it's very flexible because it features basically the full StableNet agent with just some very small limitations due to the limited computation power, but that's very specific things. Most of the things can be normally done. Yeah.
That's excellent. Again, David, thank you. And again, if others have questions about that, then your partners can help you out in that way. So again, David, I really thank you for your time and taking us through that. Wish we could have spent a little longer. Perhaps if on the feedback from our attendees, if you'd like to know more about this subject, you've got information on the screen there. If you'd like to cover the subject in a bit more detail than another session, again, just give us your feedback and we'll do what we can to assist. Other questions that we received have been answered in the chat, so that's good. We'll also be sending a link, as we mentioned at the beginning, to the recording of the session via email. If you'd like to review it again or share it, then that would be good. And we'd be more than happy to answer any questions you have. Just drop us an email or give us a call on the telephone number provided there, and then we'll get responses out to you. So thanks again for everyone for joining. We'll leave the session open just for a few more minutes, just in case you have any other further questions that you'd like to ask initially. And we'll get back to you on that. But for now, thank you very much for joining.
Thank you very much.
Bye for now.